TTB Music Podcast.
And action.
Is it recording?
It is recording, yeah.
Good.
At the moment it's recording.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, I'm not making that mistake again.
And again.
Yeah, except clearly we have made that mistake before. Yes, welcome back, listener. It's the 7th podcast of the year as we move smoothly into July.
Yeah.
And this month we are looking at ABC Lexicon of Love II, Garbage, Strange Little Birds, Brandy Clark, Big Day in a Small Town, Colvin and Earle, Lacuna, Coil, Delirium, and Rick Astley, 50. So, we shall start in the 80s.
Always a good place to start.
Yeah, and we'll be ending in the 80s as well, clearly, but we should start in the 80s.
Yeah.
And the 9th album from ABC, and a decision for the money to decide it's a sequel to the 1982 debut album, Lexicon of Love. First album in 8 years as well. Well, so, one, do we really need another ABC album, full stop? And two, is it worthy of the title Lexicon of Love II? Pete?
Yes. And, yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah,
You want more? Right. Lexicon of Love II. It's a good album. If you like ABC, I have to say, one thing that always surprises me about Martin Fry is the guy's voice. It hasn't changed.
No, he just still sounds.
He still sounds exactly the same as he did 30 odd years ago on the original. This is just a really pleasant album. You know, it's upbeat pretty much all the way through.
I wrote pleasant down.
You wrote pleasant?
Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah, you never know, we didn't rehearse these things. It's a very pleasant album. It's upbeat all the way through. There isn't really I can't really say anything negative about it, because there's nothing negative about this. So every note is happy, every song is happy.
Yes.
It's just love from cover to cover. And it's all the different sort of variations on love and romantic love, and you know, it's just a real joy to listen to. I wouldn't say it's the greatest album of the year by far. You know, but it's a good album. I'm not going to say solid, by the way. It's a good album. You know, what do you want? It's Martin Fry. It's the band are back together. They're happy. They're singing about love.
Yeah. I would have to concur. I mean, it's, you know, it's that kind of 36 years on thing, reusing title, really in hopes for cash in. Could
clearly didn't have to be called that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Could and should, by all rights, probably be awful, but it's not. As I say, it is genuinely pleasant, an enjoyable retro pop trip. Certainly better than a lot of records you're likely to hear this year, and certainly better than some of the ones that we've already heard this year.
Yeah.
And it has a kind of big kind of, you know, it's big, as you'd expect, lots of strings.
Yeah.
Big kind of sweeping, almost cinematic, you know, kind of technicolor, kind of.
But it never grows tired as well. That sort of technicolor, sweeping.
I mean, I think first time round, Trevor Horn was responsible for that. I think this time round he was unavailable, so I think Martin Fry's co-produced this himself. I think.
Right.
And it is an enjoyable album. I mean, most people, unless they've been living under a rock, are probably familiar with the single Viva Love, which has got lots of airplay, big on Radio 1, big on Radio 2, which apparently is the only song on the album that's been knocking around for years. The rest of it was kind of written fairly recently.
Okay.
But that, in one form or another, had been knocking around for a bit. That's a great tune. You've got Singing Not the Song and Love Inside the Love. Although Love Inside the Love, I was listening to that and thinking, this is ripping off a Gem song. I can't figure out which one it is. Yeah. So those were tracks that immediately spring to mind if I'm looking through the list of things as kind of highlights, but the rest of the album is perfectly fine. It's an enjoyable record to listen to. You put it on and you go with the flow, I suppose.
Yeah,
really.
It's a great summer album as well. I think it's pitched exactly right for this time of year.
Indeed, I think you're spot on there. So off to a good start.
And we'll be back to 80s voices later.
Yes. We'll now move on to surprisingly only the 6th album from Garbage, Strange Little Birds. I think we actually reviewed the fifth album.
We did. Bleed Like Me? Was that the 4th?
No, I think that was the 4th. Wherever the one that was about 4 years ago, wasn't it?
No, sounds right.
Yeah.
Memorable.
I know, that's quite bad, isn't it, really? So it's the 6th album from the band.
Make that list.
And this is quite interesting for me because I think it's it's kind of the kind of cinematic element to this as well. And it's not, for me, it felt much more atmospheric and less pop driven than the last couple of albums, I think, from them, whilst retaining the kind of mashup of sounds, kind of studio sounds, industrial, indie pop, trip hop kind of stuff that has essentially made their sound over the years. There's been a few reviews of the album saying it's probably their best album since their eponymous debut. And I have to confess, this was definitely one of those classic instances where the first couple of listens I was going, not so sure really. It's fine, but... and then I had the magic third listen moment, which then resulted in the almost immediately 4th listen moment. And I've come around to this album quite a lot. I think this arguably is their best album since the debut album. Partly because it's always nice to hear records that are just grim, and it's not an upbeat pop record. It's particularly lyrically, typically as you might expect from Shirley Manson, despite the fact that she's been happily married for 6 years to the band's engineer. Actually, you wouldn't necessarily know it from the lyrics on this record. I mean, it's a record that starts off with tracks sometimes with the lyrics. Sometimes I'd rather take a beating, sometimes I'd rather take a punch. I learn more when I'm bleeding, you knock me down, and then I get up. And that kind of sets the tone for
the whole record.
For the lyrics on this thing. And sometimes, obviously, is an interesting kind of slow, brooding, basically 9 Inch Nails track. And then goes into one of the handful of poppier moments on the album, I suppose. Empty, along with, I think, We Never Tell, and probably Magnetised towards the end of the album, are both, all three are very much in that kind of typical garbage kind of pop rocker kind of category. Kind of bread and butter garbage kind of stuff, really. But for me, the tracks that's really work for me actually are some of the kind of slower tracks that have got more interesting things going on. So, Night Drive, Loneliness, Even Though Our Love Is Doomed, particularly, I really, really like. And Amends, the very end of the album. Again, it's kind of slow, brooding, but there's some interesting musically and lyrical kind of notes blending in. And it is an album that the more and more I'm listening to it, the more and more I'm getting out of it. So, good chance that this will be in my top 20 come the end of the year.
I agree. I agree with pretty much everything you said. In fact, yeah, it's I think it is possibly their best album for 20 years. 20 years. I think. I mean, yeah, okay. Version 2 gives it a good run for its money, but I think it's definitely up there with their sort of classic. First 2 albums. There's even a nice time with the original album that you look at the sleeve. You got the feathers and the G on the original. On this one, you've got sort of the leopard skin.
Yes,
but it's the same sort of G format. So there's a nice little nod there as well, which I liked. I mean, sometimes for me, Set the Tone for this album, I think it's my favourite track of the album. Yeah, it's definitely in my top 10 list of tracks. Not that I ever get around to compiling it, but one day, man can dream. It's definitely in there. I mean, it really does set the tone, and it's probably my favourite track of theirs for probably just as long. Yeah, I thought it was an awesome track, and it does really set the tone, and it does really sort of set out what this album's about. This album is a classic garbage album from that sort of dark, brooding alternative rock era.
Yes.
Which they, along with the likes Nine Inch Nails and others, were characteristic of. I mean, all I can add to what you've already said is I do like teaching little fingers to play, as well, amends, and so we can stay alive. I think again it sort of goes a little bit sort of more latter day average garbage, somewhere in the middle.
Yeah,
but it starts very strongly and it ends strongly as well. So for me, yes, this is definitely in my top something of the year, to be determined.
To be determined.
Right,
Right.
we've not had many, so
Right.
it's good.
We move from that to Country Corner
Hey!
for our next to and it is really, because we do come back to rock and 80s later on the podcast, but for now we turn to country, and the second album from Brandy Clark, whose first album we liked a lot.
We did.
She is someone that's worked with and written with Casey Musgraves and Shane McAnally, and in fact she continues to work with Shane, particularly on as co-written some of the songs on this record.
I can tell.
Yeah, and yeah, so this is her second album. Bit of a kind of slight change in direction of going kind of more slightly upbeat than the first album, I think.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
does it work?
Yeah. The first album was quite dark in places. It felt like battered and bruised country.
Yes, I like it. Very good.
It's like Casey Musgrave hit the bottle for 30 years and came back out the other side. I know Brandy Clark's not that old, but you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm getting at. Whereas this is, definitely more upbeat. Sort of more traditional, what you'd expect country to sound like, if that makes sense. I mean, we've had some really good albums recently that have crossed over to the mainstream. I'm thinking of Casey and I'm thinking of Brandy's first album. This is actually a bit more traditional, what a country album should sound like in my mind.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. And it doesn't lose anything for it, actually. I mean, there's great tracks on here. Girl Next Door, Homecoming Queen. I love Daughter.
Yeah.
And just the vengy bitchiness of a mother's ballad to her girl, I hope you have to deal with all the I've had to deal with. Again, that sort of, it encapsulates what the first album did, which is that sort of small town, big stories kind of vibe. In the first album you had broken marriages and cheating husbands and lying and smoking and drinking. And in this, you actually have a track called Drinking and Smoking and Cheating. And you also have Big Day in a Small Town and 3 Kids and No Husband. So it's that sort of earthy, gritty stuff. And then a very personal track at the end.
Yeah, Since You're to Heaven, yes.
Really sort of, if you wonder why the likes of Donald Trump are getting so much traction at the moment, you just have to listen to the lyrics of that song and think about what's been happening here as well. And you start to see that disconnect between, the world around us and actually what's happening back in a small town where she grew up.
Absolutely.
Not that I'm being political. Just saying.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I say that it's quite funny because this album does starts off really, really mainstream with soap opera and Girl Next Door, and soap opera is literally what it is. Sounds like it's a story about everyone playing their part and how kind of cliched things are in all towns, really, never mind small towns.
Yeah, true.
And Girl Next Door is just pure Tango in the Night, Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah.
Which is kind of really weird. It's kind of appears and you're thinking, wow, really?
Yeah.
And then you mentioned Homecoming Queen as well. Homecoming Queen is one of my favourite tracks on the album. Apparently, it'd been Sheryl Crow recorded it first.
No, right.
She says so. The song had been knocking around for a while. I mean, Brandy wrote it, I think, with Shane McAnally, and it was on Cheryl's country album of a couple of years back.
Rings a bell. Yes.
I've since listened to Cheryl's version of it as well.
Very good.
It's good, but the version here
this one better?
Is definitely better.
There you go.
Apart from that, I would agree with one of the other things you said. There's still that kind of honesty about the songs that I quite like. lyrically and in the way she kind of gets the songs over as well. It's just there's a genuine kind of honesty and believability about the stories she's telling, and stories that, you know, what I think is good about these kind of songs is that they're songs that will work in a you know, big arena, lots of people in, but will also work with her just sat with an acoustic guitar.
Yeah,
in fact, we've seen her do just the latter.
And that's exactly what I pictured half of these tracks sounding like. Even though they sound different on this record, I could just picture her playing them just with a guitar and her in a bar. In a bar.
So I not sure if it's as good as the first album, but it's still a pretty good record.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It's a good sentiment.
I said we stick with country music, sort of, and we move on to the debut album. Which is funny to say, a debut album from people that have been around for years. The debut album from Colvin and Earle, which are Sean Colvin and Steve Earle. Clearly artists that have both been around for a long time, both very successful in their own right. And they got together 18 months ago and decided to sit down and write a record together. And one of the things I quite like about this record, one, that it's very short. It's, you know, it is half an hour, if that. Two, they resisted the temptation just to literally just throw every song they'd written onto the album. So it's actually, the album's made up of 6 songs that they wrote together and 4 covers. Yeah. The most well-known of the covers being a cover of the Rolling Stones' Ruby Tuesday. And so I kind of liked that they just kind of thought, you know what, we've got some songs, but some of these songs aren't good enough, so rather than just stick it all on and release an album that's 50 minutes, an hour, we just want to release an album that's got 10 tracks on it. Short, sweet. And because of that, I think it's quite an easy record to listen to, because it does kind of rattle on by. I think mostly it's pretty good. I think the combination of their voices, the kind of gruffness of Steve Earle's voice and slightly more kind of melodic tone to Colvin's, I think works quite well. Strange talking about gruffness and melodic, given that the next album that's coming up also has a bit of that going on. And so, yeah, I think it's good. I think, bizarrely, Ruby Tuesday, the cover of Ruby Tuesday, possibly because it is so well known, is possibly the worst track on the album. Although I saw them live and it was brilliant live.
I can imagine.
It kind of worked, just really, really worked live, which it doesn't quite work for me on the record. And it kind of feels like a place on the record as well, for me, in the context of the rest of the tracks. Yeah. Where the album does really work well, and I think that they work well together, is on songs like Tell Moses, which is the second track, which is a kind of foot-stomping kind of folk song that kind of draws on lots of similar songs in the past. You're Right, I'm Wrong, which is a sentiment we're all familiar with in life. And the best track on the entire album for me is the closing track, You're Still Gone, which I think is just a beautiful, beautiful song, and worthy of listening to the album just for that track. So I think it's good, not brilliant record, but it's an enjoyable record to listen to, and one that you're kind of thinking, well, I'd be quite happy for them to do another.
Yeah, I'd be interested to hear another. You're obviously a long-term fan of one of these artists, so I can't really do it justice. I enjoyed this record. I perhaps didn't enjoy it as much as the Brandy Clark record, but I still enjoyed it. I actually thought that Ruby Tuesday, I could hear that. I could hear how that might work in a different setting. So I didn't have a problem with that, actually. I thought it was fine. Yeah. I see what you're saying, though. It does stick out a little. Yeah,
it worked better. Bizarrely, it works better live without strings.
Ah, okay, yeah.
No, just the acoustic guitars and kind of...
Fair enough. I mean, for me, that was a standout because it's a great song. And You're Still Gone is obviously beautiful. and you know, there are a couple of other tracks on here which are just really, you know, just sort of really nice, sort of easy listening easy listening, easy to listen to, and easy
listening. Yeah,
you know, it's a nice album. It's kind of a little bit quieter, I think, than the sort of earthiness of the Brandy Clarks, and that sort of, it's more folk than country for sure.
Yes,
but no, it's good.
Speaking of quiet, Lacuna Coil and their 8th album, Delirium, and the band that obviously in their past done one of the, in my opinion, one of the best Depeche Mode covers.
Which one was it
again?
Was it Enjoy the Silence?
Yes, Enjoy the Silence.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Italy's finest. Pete.
It peaked for me with Enjoy the Silence several years ago. I really wanted to like this record, but it wasn't very good. Plus, they called it Delirium. I mean, come on.
I know.
How cliche can you get? It's like, it's Delirium. You know,
that's House of Shame you were doing there.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. That's the opening track. I was really disappointed. I really was. I thought this could have been an awesome record, but it wasn't. Fortunately, I listened to this before listening to the garbage album. Because had I done it the other way around, I think my expectations would have been way too high. So no, I mean, I must confess I only listened to this the once through. I couldn't bring myself to listen to it again.
Does it
improve?
Yes, it does. Because
really?
I have to say my opinion.
I mean, the rule
of it,
is it always does, you know.
My opinion of it was very, very similar. It has to be said. I mean, I'm quite a big fan of their album from 2002, 2003, I think it is. Yeah. Commonlies, which is I still think it's a pretty good record. This suddenly, when I put it on first of all, and one, it's noticeably heavier than I remember them being.
Yeah, that's what I thought as well.
So there was that. First listen, I genuinely, like you, I thought this really is total bollocks. But then I have listened to it again, and I have to confess, bits of it have actually grown on me, including strangely the opener House of Shame, which was kind of Delirium. Delirium is arguably the best track on the album, title track.
Shame.
Yeah. Take Me Home, the 6th track on the album, is also quite good. The problem, even as I was starting to like bits of it, though, was I liked bits more in isolation rather than as part of the album. And when listening to it as an album, even when I got through the 3rd listen, which was this afternoon, it was just a sameness to it as it kind of went on that meant I kind of got lost so even as I was thinking, I quite like these couple of tracks at the start of the album, by the time we drifted into the second half of the record, I had kind of drifted myself, and just kind of thought, well, no, it's not coming together for me. Yeah. So whilst I don't think it is total bollocks, as my first listen would have led me to believe, I still don't think it's their best record of the ones that I'm familiar with, and I don't think it quite hangs together as well as it could.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair comment. I think a little tightening around the edges, it could have been a much better record, a much more enjoyable listen. As I say, I wanted to like it, and we have listened to far worse from this genre.
Oh, Christ,
yeah. We've listened to some right rotters.
Yeah, I mean, but we have listened to some even better growling, though.
Yeah, we have had better growling on worse records. But anyway, so yes, there we go. That was my thoughts.
So,
silence.
Back to the 80s, and the return of Rick Astley. The
first words I never thought we'd hear.
I know. First album in over 10 years, and surprisingly, his 8th studio album altogether, which
really?
I didn't actually realise I thought he'd actually taken a bigger break than he had.
Yeah, I thought he had. He's obviously had a dabble.
Yeah. So he's back with 12 new tracks, all written and produced by the man himself. And this is This is an interesting record. I mean, it genuinely is an interesting record. No one has, or at least no one that actually knows what they're talking about musically, has ever said the man doesn't have a great voice.
Yeah.
And there's ample proof of it on this record. You know, he may be 50, and I do like the kind of Adele
little
job of having a age for the thing. But he can still belt out a tune with his nice deep baritone voice he's got. Musically, I think it's a bit of a mixed bag. It starts off pretty strong with the two singles that have been released off it, Keep Singing and Angels on My Side, although perhaps Candy Staton deserves a songwriting credit for the kind of You Got the love bit that's clearly at the start of the song. And then you have a really nice acoustic ballad called Wish Away, which I quite liked as well. And I was feeling good for Rick and the 80s and everything.
Yeah.
And then we go into This Old House, which I think is not the Shakin' Stevens classic.
That's my first thought.
Yeah.
Shame.
Yeah, it is a shame, actually, because this is where the album hit its first dud note for me. And was also the point where I was thinking, oh, for God's sake, stop listening to Moby's Play album. Because there's a lot of that in the back, musically in the background of this album. There's a lot that piano sound. You're thinking that is just lifted straight off Play.
Yeah.
And I thought I wasn't going to hear that again. It's not that Play's a bad album. Don't get me wrong. Play's a good record, but yeah.
It was this time.
Yeah. And then once I've got over that, he then does his, the Beatles as done by Take That song pieces. And I was kind of starting to lose it at that point, and then I totally lost it when it got to God Says. And it actually is quite a religious album.
It is.
Lyrically, or spiritual album if you like. There's and not just because you've got a track called God Says and then there's a track called Pray With Me. Even on the other tracks, there's definitely a kind of spiritual bent to the lyrics themselves, and overall, it's a decent comeback record. Again, gonna hear much worse records this year. If someone was playing it, you wouldn't be kind of necessarily tempted to turn it off or anything. It's fine, but for me, it's a slight shame that it starts off as strong as it does and then doesn't quite. Rest of the album doesn't quite live up to the strength of those opening three tracks for me.
Okay, it's a fair comment, because I think it's true. It's a fair comment. It's true. He's just got an awesome voice.
Yeah,
he's just got an awesome voice. He just sounds like he's having a really good time as well. I mean, even when you see him on TV at interviews, and I saw him on the National Lottery.
Well, you're here, so you clearly didn't win.
Classic Rick Astley. And he just seems to be having a laugh the whole time whenever you hear from him, whether it was at 30, 40 or 50. You know?
Well, yeah, he's always come across as a genuinely nice bloke.
Yeah, he is a genuinely nice bloke. And my only thought is, and you touched on it at the very start, if only he'd brought someone else in just to tweak the lyrics or help with the production, I think this would be a classic record. I really do. Not for me, not my taste, but I just think, this could have been a Take That equivalent sort of album, just a little bit more polish. I have to say, I love the song God Saves when we have the singing park benches floating in the sky. I thought, this guy's just taking the piss. He's really enjoying himself and he's making fun of you.
Well, I did think he was taking the piss. Yeah.
He's clearly having a laugh on some of this. You're right. There's sort of first three tracks are really, really, really good. And actually, I listened to this record with my wife, and the last couple of tracks, I think it was the last track. She's like, "Oh, there we go. There's his Christmas number one." It had that real sort of, the ballad.
Yes.
And it got me thinking, actually, didn't he have a Christmas? Yeah, he did, didn't he? Well, maybe not quite. But off his first album, he did a cover of Nat King Cole.
He did. Do you remember that?
And I thought, there you go.
Another good baritone.
Yeah, so he's going for another run at Christmas, I reckon. That's my bet. Yeah, you heard it here first in July.
Okay.
He's going to be around at Christmas.
We let it rain then.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Right, that's us done then. So, album of the podcast.
Garbage.
Ditto.
Ooh, Garbage, followed very closely by Brandy Clark.
I would have to agree. I
Yeah.
think the Garbage album is definitely the winner for me.
Yeah.
And we'll be hearing more of that at the end of the year. And probably from Brandy Clark too. Right, that's us done from the podcast. Join us again whenever we can be bothered to get together again and choose 6 more thrilling albums to listen to.
Probably in summer, whenever that is.
Yeah, well, yeah, indeed. Other albums you've missed us reviewing are the Radiohead album.
Oh, we should do a list of these every year.
Yeah.
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 Nah,
We haven't.
okay,
But yeah,
fair
and also,
Yeah.
unless you're a Radiohead fan and you, I mean, really Radiohead fan, you're really not missing out by not hearing the Radiohead album. Dope. Yeah. Anyway, till next time.
This month's podcast is dedicated to Chris Crowley.